Chapter 1255. Someone from the Divine Herbs sect came too. It was the only thing she could do for Fayer. When you... Li coughed out a mouthful of blood as his face reflected discomfort. You shut up. When Yu snapped in a stern voice. What right do you have to talk too much here? If you can't even protect your daughter, what use is there for you to be the head of the Qin family? Enriching did somewhat appreciate when you, at least compared to Li's selfishness, when you did love Fayer even if she had used the wrong way to show it. Enriching raised her hand and a sword suddenly appeared in her palm. It flew through the air and landed on Wen Ye's arm. Blood flowed from her arm. She bit her lower lip from the pain. Her already pale face was bloodless now. Mother. Fayer's face changed drastically as her heart almost stopped beating. Although she hated Wen Yu was still her mother after all. How could she be unconcerned with her mother, who was being hurt like this? However, Enriching was about to make another move when powerful energy suddenly came swiftly from the sky. The huge pot was the first to notice this sudden energy. It stopped tossing Mu Huan and fiercely rushed forward, putting itself in front of Enriching. In that instant, all the energy fell on top of the huge pot and was absorbed entirely by the huge pot. Qinger. Nailin Yan's heart was so scared that it almost stopped beating. Fortunately, Enriching was safe and sound, which had made her heart eased. But her hand was gripping Enriching's arm tightly, unwilling to let go. Under the morning light, there stood a young man in a navy blue robe. This young man looked somewhat young but was actually not. His gaze was insufferably arrogant. But all of the arrogance disappeared after he saw an advanced holy warrior standing next to Enriching. Wait. Didn't the sect master say that Tianshan Manor is in crisis now, so the Divine Herbs sect want to collect a slice of the cake from them? The sect master was very interested in the Qin family's manor lady who had suddenly made a breakthrough to advanced holy warrior tier and planned to bring her back. Me for extra chapters. But who could tell him why there were so many advanced holy warriors in Tianshan Manor? There was also a pot that could absorb his spiritual qi. At this moment, the young man saw a girl dressed in red, standing under the pot, her head raised. Her gaze was faint, but it gave a sense of compulsion. This is just a misunderstanding. The young man wiped the sweat on his forehead and laughed. I was passing by, really, I just passed by here to take a look. I didn't want to do anything just now. It was my spiritual qi that has automatically flowed out without my control. Well, everything he said was so honest, these people would believe it, right? Greeny. Enriching faintly called out. Everyone looked at each other, and no one knew whom she was calling. Until the green-robed holy warrior opened his mouth. Master, my name is Wu Yu, not Greeny. Everyone was embarrassed. You can't call someone green just because they're wearing a green robe. Can't you just ask them if you don't know their name? Oh, Enriching was expressionless. Settle that one. Yes, master. The young man in a dark blue robe was pale with fear. I'm just an innocent passerby passing through here. I don't want to get involved in your fight. I'll leave now, alright. What had he done just now? Why did he make the first move without seeing who he was going to attack? If the sect master had not asked him to take the Qin family's Qin Fayer back, he would not have to attack Enriching. Chapter 1256. Someone from the Divine Herbs sect came. Enriching did not say anything as she gave the young man a once-over expressionlessly. The young man was uncomfortable. If it was not for fear of Wu Ye's strength, he might have turned around and left this place as fast as possible. Are you from the Divine Herbs sect? An old voice suddenly spoke from within the crowd. This voice was like a thunderbolt from the clear sky, almost causing the young man's heart to stop beating. He was clearly embarrassed as he looked at the old master who had just spoken and accosted him. "Old master, I think you've mistaken me for someone else." "Oh," the old master pointed at something on the young man's chest. "You have the words Divine Herbs Sect written on your robe, and I still don't think anyone will be so bold to impersonate someone from the Divine Herbs Sect." The young man lowered his neck stiffly, only then did he clearly see those words on his robe, and he suddenly felt like crying. The people in the Divine Herbs Sect were so narcissistic that even the Divine Herbs Sect name had to be put on his robes. He was so panicked just now that he had forgotten about something. His name. He would tell them after they had calmed down. He. The people of the Divine Herbs Sect would not only be passing by. They would not come to Tianshan Manor if they wanted nothing. "Wu Yu." Feng Ruqing looked cold. "Bring him to me." "Yes." Wu Yu cupped his fist as he responded respectfully. The crowd was in disbelief as they looked at Wu Yu, who was a respectable figure before. He was so different from the arrogant green-robe man he was before. This transformation. It was too fast that it took people by surprise. The young man's face changed slightly as he looked at Wu Yu, who was swiftly approaching him. He took a few steps backward, and there was a hint of a struggle flickering in his eyes. In the end, he quietly took out a transparent pearl. This was something that the sect master had given him before he left. It could instantly bring the disciples back to the Divine Herbs Sect. Of course, not everyone could possess the pearl, but only those with extremely high status within the Divine Herbs Sect were eligible to receive the pearl. Me for extra chapters. After all, to the Divine Herbs Sect, the pearl was a life-saving weapon that was better than any treasure. The young man slowly closed his eyes and opened them abruptly. He fiercely threw the pearl at Qin Feier and struck a spiritual qi, forcing it toward the transparent pearl. Snap! The pearl burst open on top of Qin Feier's head. In an instant, her body was surrounded by a burst of light, which then became more and more transparent until she vanished before everyone's eyes. Indeed, Qin Feier had disappeared in front of everyone. The young man was quietly relieved. The purpose of his visit was to get the share back and bring back Qin Feier. The sect master had given him the pearl because he was afraid that Qin Feier was too strong for him to handle. If he had the pearl, he could quickly bring Qin Feier to the Divine Herbs Sect. Now, it seemed that these people had suppressed Qin Feier, otherwise, she would not be in such a mess. It was really a pity about the pearl. The young man was a little distressed, but if he could not complete his mission, the sect master would surely punish him as well. So, he might as well give it a try. Feng Ruqing calmly looked in the direction in which Qin Feier had disappeared. Her dark eyes were as calm as ever, and she did not seem surprised by it. The Divine Herbs Sect came for Qin Feier only. After a long while, Feng Ruqing withdrew her gaze and turned to the young man. The young man smiled coldly. "Since all of you recognize my identity, I will not hide it anymore. Yes, my sect master is interested in Qin Feier because she's weak but can still make a breakthrough to advanced holy warrior tier. I was asked to come and take her away." Chapter 1257, The Tragic Divine Herbs Sect's Skilled Master. Well, Feng Ruqing smiled faintly. "Initially, I hadn't thought of going to the Divine Herbs Sect. But since you've taken Qin Feier away, then I'll go there myself, and as for now," the young man panicked, but he tried not to show it on his face. He gritted his teeth hard. "Now, what do you want to do? You let Qin Feier go, so you have to stay." Boss. The huge pot was so excited that the young man could feel the pot salivating, wanting to rush down and swallow him. "I am from the Divine Herbs Sect." The young man panicked and took a few steps back. Before he could even find a chance to escape, Wu Yu was already behind him, making it impossible for him to leave. The crowds were also startled. Feng Ruking's possessed man was advanced holy warrior, but the divine herbs sect was able to remain in the mainland for so many years. It showed that their people must be strong too. If Feng Ruqing fought against the divine herbs sect, it would not end well. However, the crowd fell silent again after they saw the huge pot hovering above Feng Ruking's head. No one knew what level of strength this pot was at, but as it was able to make an advanced holy warrior bow to Feng Ruqing, it must have a power that was beyond the world's imagination. In that case, perhaps Feng Ruqing would still have a chance to fight with the divine herbs sect. Little pot, cripple him. Feng Ruqing glanced at the young man's face expressionlessly. The huge pot buzzed as if it was somewhat puzzled. Master did not want to turn this human into a slave. I have no shortage of fighters right now, but my mother's Fengyun manor should be short of a latrine cleaner. So, you cripple one of his arms and throw him to Fengyun manor to clean the latrines. Everyone could not help but inhale sharply. This young man was not as strong as Wu Yu, but at least he was a holy warrior, making a holy warrior clean the latrine. It was such a waste. It was such a waste. Me for extra chapters. The old Master Mu's eyes twitched as he stared at Feng Ruqing sadly. You don't lack fighters, but I do. If you don't need them, you can give them to me. He's a holy warrior, and his rank in the divine herbs sect doesn't seem low. Yet, you're asking him to clean the latrines. Chinger, there's no shortage of people to clean the latrines in Fengyun Manor. Nailin Yen smiled sweetly. The young man was just starting to catch his breath when Nailin Yen spoke again. But General Manor should be short of a latrine cleaner. What about this? You send him to your grandfather at General Manor and let your grandfather set him up. As Nailin Yen had said so, Feng Ruqing was not forcing him to be thrown to Fengyun Manor again. She stroked her chin as she smiled. Mother is right, it's best to have grandfather settle him. After all, he is a holy warrior. Besides cleaning the latrines, he can also train generals for our Nailin family. The iron-blooded troop also needs someone like him. It was hard to get a holy warrior's skilled master that could do more work, so she would use him to his bones. The young man was chilled to the bones as he listened to these people's words. He suddenly felt like he was in the middle of hell. Sect Master, these people are so scary, I want to go home. No matter how hard the young man cried, these people in front of him did not feel the slightest pity for him. Chapter 1258, The Tragic Divine Herbs Sect's Skilled Master too. They all looked at him with those greedy eyes, as if they wanted to squeeze every last bit of his value out of him. A cold wind blew in the sky. The streets had quieted down, and the storm of war had long dissipated like clouds. Feng Ruqing raised her eyes and looked at the crowd behind Qin Li with a cold smile. Qin Li's knees weakened and fell to the ground. He looked defeated as his eyes were sunken and dark. He had lost. In the end, he had still lost. Ha ha ha. Losing so miserably, and there was no turning back. Maiden Ruqing. The clans that followed Qin Li panicked and hurriedly kneeled in front of Feng Ruqing. Their voices earnest and pleading as they said, the Qin family forced us to do this. The other clans who disobeyed his orders have been destroyed, and the Zhuge family is one of them. Qin Li has sold Zhuge Jia, the daughter of the Zhuge family, to a brothel. Zhuge Jia. Feng Ruqing felt that this name was somewhat familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere. Suddenly, a clear and shy voice spoke in her mind, as if it had happened yesterday. Maiden Feng, I am Zhuge Jia of the Zhuge family. I saw you at the evening feast, and I can't forget you since then. You're more handsome than any other man in the world. Later, I understand that women are better than men. Maiden Feng, please keep me with you. Zhuge, the shy and lovely girl who wanted to be with Feng Ruqing. Was she sold by Qin Li to a brothel? To Feng Ruqing, there were only two kinds of women, cute and pleasing, like Tang Yin and Gu Yi, the people of iron-blooded troop, and these girls who surrounded her in Tianshan Manor. The other kind of women was like Qin Fei, who she could never like. That woman had even peeped at her state preceptor. In comparison, the girl named Zhuge Jia was really likable, even though Feng Ruqing did not have much contact with her. Such a lovely little girl was sold to a brothel. Feng Ruqing frowned abruptly. Which brothel? Me for extra chapters. Welcome Spring Courtyard and the pimp is Qin Li's old lover. As soon as this was mentioned, everyone looked at Qin Li in disbelief. The pimp of a brothel was Qin Li's old lover. When Yu was still grieving and had not returned to her senses. Previously, she would have definitely jumped over and scratched all over Qin Li's face, leaving bloody marks. Wu Yu, Feng Ruqing said coldly, you go and destroy the Welcome Spring Courtyard. Arrest those who are forcing the good girls to work in the brothel and send them to Gushi. She would not look down on the girls in the brothel, nor would she look down on those who sold themselves for money because many of them did not have other choices to support their lives. So, the only people she wanted to wipe out were those who forced the good girls into prostitution. If those girls had volunteered, she would not have been able to say much, but if they had been forced, this Welcome Spring Courtyard should indeed be destroyed. Yes, Master, Wu Yu answered respectfully. The crowd present was somewhat speechless. You're just ending a brothel, do you really have to send an advanced holy warrior to do it? If you simply choose one person from the Mu family, it's enough to wipe out the whole Welcome Spring Courtyard. After giving her orders, Feng Ruqing looked at the group of people kneeling in front of her. These people were all trembling. They knew that the Qin family was defeated, and if they wanted to live, they had to bow down to Feng Ruqing. Chapter 1259. The truth. Feng Ruqing's gaze fell on the people in front of him. These people were all frozen. They lowered their heads in fear as they tried to minimize their presence. Old Master, what do you want to do with these people? Feng Ruqing smiled as she turned to the old Master Mu. These were Tianshan Manor's people, after all. It would be better if they took care of it. I will tie them all up and send them to the Chief Master. With one hand behind his back, the old Master Mu looked at these people kneeling in front of him with his sharp, cold eyes. As for the Qin family, they are one of the culprits and deserve to be executed on the spot, but for the sake of the four families of Tianshan Manor, I will let the Qin family live for a few more days. The old Master Mu paused. So, hang these two on the city gate and roast them to death with a blazing fire. Qin Li's legs weakened as he fell to the ground. The old Master Mu was too cruel. It would be better and easier to just finish him off. Qin Li, the old Master Mu walked slowly toward Qin Li. His face looked cold as he asked, tell me, is Qin Chen Shao Qing's younger brother? If you tell me, I'll give you a good thrashing. Qin Li frowned. He stared at Qin Chen for a few moments and suddenly laughed out loud. Ha ha ha. Qin Chen is the one that I've saved from someone else, not Feng Tianyu's child. I saved his life, but he is doing this to me. Even if I die, I'll curse him for the rest of his life. Up until now, Qin Li still refused to acknowledge Qin Chen's origins. He smiled mockingly, and his eyes were full of anger and contempt. Indeed, he would never make it easy for these people even if he died. Besides the people of Tianshan Manor, the Divine Herbs sect and Deity's Gate all knew that he, Qin Li, had saved an orphan. But the orphan had bit the hand that fed him and wanted to kill his adopted parents. Even the kindest people would never let Qin Chen live a good life. Even if they could not harm Qin Chen, they could still make him suffer from the curses for the rest of his life. So what if I even made Qin Chen sacrifice his blood? He's not going to die just from giving some blood. I am his savior, and those righteous people in this world will definitely seek justice for my Qin family. Ha ha ha. Feng Ruqing kicked him hard. Qin Li suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale, paralyzed. He had just suffered a severe injury from Wu Ye's attack, so he was unable to withstand Feng Ruqing's kick, and was too weak to speak anymore. Me for extra chapters. I think hanging you on the city gate and roasting you to death is too easy. The chief master should have set up a penal code. Old Master Mu, send him to the chief manor. I will not allow him to die until the last drop of his blood is drained, and the last piece of his skin is peeled off. The young girl was stunning and domineering. She was beautiful and unrestrained, like an emperor looking down on the world he ruled. Qin Li's face was pale, but he still smiled stubbornly and chuckled. Feng Ruqing pulled Qin Li up and dumped him in front of the old Master Mu. She then turned her gaze to Wen Yu. Wen Yu was already scared silly. Or perhaps it was because her daughter had escaped, so she had started to think about saving herself. As Feng Ruqing approached her, Wen Yu's legs became weak. She almost fell to the ground. Somehow, she always had the feeling of being overpowered by the young girl's fierce gaze. I've told you that. Wen Yu was trembling as she said, my daughter's health has been bad since she was young. And there was a master. Chapter 1260, The Truth Too. Wen Yu, shut up. Qin Li's eyes were red as he gathered all his strength and roared. His body trembled with anger. Feng Ruqing did not hesitate to step on Qin Li's mouth when she turned to Wen Yu. If you don't want to suffer like this, then you should tell me everything. Wen Yu trembled harder. Death was not terrifying, what was terrifying was living a life that was worse than death. Wen Yu hated Feng Ruqing so much, but she did not dare to go against her at a time like this. Wen Yu knew Feng Ruqing would do as she had said. I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything. It was a fortune teller who told us that there was a newborn baby in the eastern part of Luyun Kingdom that could save my daughter in the future back then. Qin Li had sent someone to that place and taken Qin Chen away. Qin Chen's blood is special and suitable to be a drug primer. He is a supreme treasure that can save lives, so that's why we took Qin Chen away. Feng Ruqing fiercely kicked Wen Yu and flipped her over. Wen Yu was in pain that her eyes were almost popping out. Her face turned paler as she coughed hard. I've already told you everything. What more do you want? Feng Ruqing sneered. You talk too much. In an instant, Wen Yu's entire face lost its color, her lips trembled as she could not say a word. Indeed, she had mentioned all of these to let people know how useful Qin Chen was, so anyone would surely come to take him away in the future anyway. But, she did not expect that Feng Ruqing would immediately discover her plan. The old Master Mu walked toward Wen Yu, expressionlessly. Even if Qin Chen's blood is special, it can only alleviate the condition, not cure it. Otherwise, why hasn't your daughter's illness been cured after so many years? Wen Yu's lips trembled, unable to say a word. Anne. My situation is worse than your daughter's. At least your daughter is just weak and sickly, but I almost died, and had even lost all of my strength, me for extra chapters. This was the first time that old Master Mu admitted about what happened to the strength that he had once lost in front of these people. Wen Yu was somewhat puzzled as she stared at the old Master Mu. The old Master Mu smiled coldly. But now, I have recovered. I have gotten my strength back, and even more, I could make a breakthrough. Do you know why? Wen Yu was stunned, unable to say a word. Because, the old Master Mu paused for a moment. Because of Feng Ruqing. Indeed. It was because of his granddaughter-in-law that his grandson had found. She saved not only him, but also the Mu family. She was the Mu family's savior. Wen Yu was even more puzzled, not quite understanding what the old Master Mu meant by that. Oh, right, you should know that Qin Qin. No, Feng Qin and Xiao Qing were twins. They were born on the same day, at the same time, in the same place, even the same household. Wen Ye's body stiffened as she stared at the old Master Mu in shock. Initially, she had thought that the person that the old master was referring to was Qin Qin. It was because the Qin family knew his special bloodline since the first time they saw him. When he was born, his blood was sweet and carried the herb scent, making him the most suitable drug primer. After bringing him back to the Qin family, they had used some methods to cover up the scent of his bloodline completely, but his blood was still equally effective in saving lives and curing diseases. Chapter 1261, The Truth 3. Therefore, when you had never thought of feng-ruching. Impossible, that's impossible. When Yu shook her head vigorously as her eyes were filled with pain and sorrow. I don't believe it. I don't believe what all of you are saying. The Grand Master meant Qin Qin, it definitely was him. Old Master Mu looked at Wen Yu, who was being so stubborn, and sneered. Then, was Qin Feier's disease cured by Qin Qin? Wen Yu could not say a word. The sorrow and pain on her face had already answered the question on her behalf. Indeed, if Qin Qin was the life-saving medicine that the Grand Master was talking about, then why was it that Feier disease kept returning and isn't completely cured of the illness after all these years? It is because there is just no way to completely cure it. If it was feng-ruching. If she could even cure the old master's disease, perhaps she could even cure Feier. At that moment, Wen Ye's face was as white as ash as she sat on the ground in a daze, unable to regain her senses for a long while. She only started crying pitifully in sorrow and pain after a while. Feier, I'm sorry. It is I who is sorry toward you. Although her Feier was sick, she had been so kind nonetheless, but why did she have to meet such an end in the end? Good thing the people from Divine Herb's sect had brought her away. She did not know why exactly the Divine Herb's sect had brought Feier away, but no matter what, it was better than falling into feng-ruching's hands. As such, she was also assured. A cool, breezy voice tinged with mockery rang from behind her. Back then, I had originally thought that your Qin family had really kindly saved a child. I never thought there was such a story behind it. Your Qin family has really hidden your skeletons too well. A path opened as the crowd parted. Everyone raised their heads to see who it was, and saw Gu Shi approaching in big strides. Behind him was a group of family clan heads. For so many years in Tianshan Manor, it was not that Gu Shi did not expand his own powers, but when the battle started, all the family clans that had followed him were being controlled, so much so that they were not even able to step out of their doors. He was only able to bring them out after he had recovered. Everyone looked at the Qin family's group of people with disdain and ridicule. Me for extra chapters. It seemed that nobody had ever thought that Qin Qin was a child the Qin family had stolen. Before this, I had always thought that the Qin family were kind-hearted. Be it Qin Feier or Qin Li. I never thought that Qin Feier was so vicious, and furthermore, I would never have guessed that Qin Li is such an ambitious man. This pair of father and daughter had really hidden too well. Perhaps Qin Feier had indeed once been kind, but her kindness contained a trace of selfishness, and it was merely to protect her image and reputation on the outside. Qin Li was also a good old person. He was as gentle as jade, indifferent toward fame and fortune, and had even saved an orphan. However, today, it was revealed that Qin Li had actually stolen this orphan from the arms of another parent to save Qin Feier's life. He had thus caused an entire family to be separated for so many years. Not only did these people steal Qin Qin, but they had also treated him badly, and had even made up a lie saying that they had saved his life. After Qin Chen had served in the Qin family for so many years, he had to bear the scolding of being called a white-eyed wolf one. Hilarious. Too ridiculous. From the beginning to the end, Qin Chen only had a cold expression. His eyes were clear and did not contain any hint of surprise. No one was able to detect his emotions. However, he simply stood by Feng Ruking's side and did not take a single step away. Just like a bodyguard, carefully protecting her. Even if he was really saved by the Qin family, he had long repaid their favor after all those years. When he had first returned to the Qin family, it was merely for Shao Qing's sake. That was it. Besides, he was actually stolen from his very own family. One white-eyed wolf means an ungrateful person. Chapter 1262. The truth. For the young man looked at Feng Ruqing with his clear eyes. His eyes were as brilliant as the sun, giving off a warm fuzzy light. Shao Qing, when will we go back home? Shao Qing, when will we go back home? The young man's warm voice also softened Feng Ruking's heart. She turned around to look at him and said, "When Nan Xian returns, we will go back together." "All right." His voice was still as clear as a natural spring, pure and sweet. It was as if the young man had such a look only when Feng Ruqing was around. Even the pink scar at the corner of his brow seemed to be especially good-looking. "Manner Master Gu, these people will be handed over to you to be dealt with." Old Master Mu cupped his fist. "I still need to clean up my own family's mess today, so I will take my leave first. My two in-laws, Sui, Shao Qing, Shao Qin, let's go back first." When the old master was saying these words, his gaze was sharp like a blade, scaring the clansmen of the Mu family until they shivered. Even merely standing around left them feeling uncomfortable. "Master, we were also forced to do so back then. We had to do it to protect the Mu family. You need to trust our well-meaning intentions." Mu Ying knelt down first, speaking in great distress. Everything he had done was for the Mu family. Even if he had done wrong, it was worth forgiving. Old Master Mu glanced coldly at the old man who was kneeling at the forefront and said expressionlessly, "Our Mu family does not need someone who does not obey my orders, makes his own decisions, and is, even more so, afraid of death." Mu Ying trembled and stopped talking. The other people also lowered their heads, not daring to say more. "However, considering that all of you are part of my Mu family's clan, I will not deal with all of you. All you should leave the Mu family. From now on, all of you are no longer the people of my Mu family. Your life and death will not be related to me." All of the Mu family's people trembled as they raised their heads to look at old Master Mu nervously. As part of the Mu family, normally they had done quite a bit of showing off and domination outside. They had offended quite a number of people in the past years. However, since those people were afraid of the Mu family, nobody had dared to settle scores with them. If they lost the protection of the Mu family, their endings were pretty predictable. Therefore, when they heard the old master's words, all these people started panicking. One of them pounced on old Master Mu and held onto his old thigh as he cried loudly with snot dripping out of his nose. "Master, I have done wrong. I know my mistakes. Please, I beg you, do not chase me out. I really know my mistakes. I will never dare to do this again in the future. Me for extra chapters." Old Master Mu closed his eyes in abysmal pain. He had known these people and interacted with them for so many years. How could he not have any feelings? Thus, he had given them many chances before. However, these people did not know how to repent, simply wasting the chances he had given them. How could he possibly forgive them again? "All of you should just leave. Don't force me to the corner. Otherwise, I'm afraid that all of you would be unable to leave without any harm, and who knows, maybe the whole world would know that all of you were chased out the door by me." The old master opened his eyes and said heartlessly without leaving any room for negotiation. These people only thought about protecting themselves when they met with danger. If there was a next time, he dared not guarantee that he would not be stabbed in the back in Mu residence by these people just to ensure their own survival. Such an outcome was not something he could bear. Mu Ying stood up from the ground, shaking. He understood, no matter how he begged, the old master Mu would not possibly let him stay. Master, his voice was trembling. I really was doing everything in consideration of the Mu family. I did not want the Mu family to be utterly destroyed. Chapter 1263. The Truth v. Old Master Mu had his back facing Mu Ying as he kept silent. Mu Ying finally decided to stop begging. He faced Old Master Mu's back as he bowed deeply. I understand. I will take my grandson and leave the Mu family. Leaving this Mu family, a place that he had lived for so many years. It was no doubt that he was reluctant to leave. However, the old master's mind had been made up. No matter how he begged, it would not make a difference. He might as well leave himself the last shred of dignity and leave immediately without hesitation. As the other people saw how determined old Master Mu was, despair eventually appeared on their faces. They slowly rose and without saying any last words, they took a long, respectful look at Mu residence in which they had grown up. Then, they turned around and left without looking back. The sky turned quiet. Gu Shi brought those people Qin Li was leading away. What awaited them was a severe punishment. It was also the time old Master Mu thoroughly cleaned up the family next. Logically speaking, all these were matters related to the Mu family, and as an outsider, Nailan Yen naturally was not supposed to say anything. However, when she glanced past Chen Qinyan, she could not help but smile a little. Previously, when Elder Lei Yun returned to report to me, he had already mentioned about Mu Manor's young manor master's concubine. Seeing her today, I really don't know which part of her could be discussed on the same page as my in-law, to actually be able to charm the young master until he put her in the center of his world. Awkwardness appeared on Mu Ling's handsome face. He wanted to say a few words to defend himself, but he did not know where to begin and could only awkwardly stand by the side. Sui smiled calmly. It was not that Mu Ling's judgment was bad. It was just me who did not have much of an eye. I was actually unable to tell of their affair. All these years, the only thing I am grateful to Mu Ling for is that he had given me a son. She had long been able to approach the past openly. Otherwise, she would not have returned to the Mu family. White Phoenix nodded desperately. Exactly, exactly. Sui's judgment was not good in the past. However, I believe that Sui's judgment will definitely be extremely good in the future. For example, between her and Xiao Qing. Her judgment will forever be better than Mu Ling's. What kind of judgment did Mu Ling have? He wished to choose a daughter-in-law for Nan Xian with a one-track mind, but all the daughters-in-law he had chosen, had all become Feng Rookings. Oh, he had even recklessly tried to find Nan Xian quite a few concubines. However, all those concubines added up could not even measure up to a single Feng Ruqing. He really did not know what kind of judgment he had. Could it be that he thought Nan Xian would listen to him? What a joke. Me for extra chapters. Sometimes Nan Xian did not even listen to Sui. Perhaps he was only willing to listen to Feng Ruqing alone. White Phoenix suddenly felt that he needed to hug Feng Rooking's thigh. With this thigh, perhaps Nan Xian would really call him father in the future. Sui also liked Feng Ruqing a lot. If Feng Ruqing could put in a few good words for him, would Sui agree to help him give birth to a few little phoenixes? Hee hee. The more White Phoenix thought about it, the more elated he felt. He could not help but smile. Mu Shi saw that the mighty forces had left, thus he turned around and wanted to run away whilst other people were not paying attention. Coincidentally, Feng Ruqing raised her head and saw Mu Zai's departing figure. She randomly picked up a brick and threw it at him, and it hit squarely Mu Zai's head with a thud. Mu Zai's vision went black as he lost consciousness. Sierra! Chen Qingjian's heart-wrenching call rang in the sky as she crawled back up from the ground, quickly rushing over to Mu Shi. She hugged his unconscious body with tears streaming down her face. If you want to deal with someone, then deal with me. Sierra is innocent. Feng Ruqing raised her brows as she looked down at Chen Qingyan, who was crying whilst holding Mu Shi. Chapter 1264, The Truth 6. She raised her brow. Mu Shi had teased me before. The moment she said this, everyone looked at Mu Shi with murderous intent. White Phoenix was thoroughly enraged. Perhaps he could let it go and forget that Black Dragon had wanted to snatch away Xiao Qingqing, but this Mu Shi, what on earth was he? He was just a scum. How dare he had such inappropriate intentions toward Xiao Qingqing? If Xiao Qingqing was snatched away, Nan Xian would definitely be in a fit of anger. Once Nan Xian got angry, then he could never be Nan Xian's father in this lifetime. Could it be that Mu Ling knew its intentions towards Si and had purposely made Mu Shi snatch Xiao Qingqing away to anger Nan Xian? The more White Phoenix thought about it, the more logical he felt that it was. In a fit of anger, he rushed toward Mu Shi and snatched him from Chen Qingjian's arms. Instantly, he flew across the sky and ruthlessly threw Mu Shi down from up high in the sky. If Mu Zai's cultivation was strong enough, with this throw, he would be lightly injured at most. However, Mu Shi was too useless. Even Mu Ling was disappointed in his innate talent. As such, when Mu Shi fell from the sky, a huge pit formed when he touched the ground. He was so dead that he could not possibly be more dead. If one were to discuss this, it could be said that Mu Shi could be considered lucky. Even his death was not painful. He was thrown to his death by White Phoenix when he was unconscious. Comparatively, Chen Qingyan and Mu Huan were not so fortunate. Mu Huan stared at the man in the pit in a daze. She clenched her fists so hard that her fingers were shivering. She hated Chen Qingjian's biasness. In order to support Mu Shi, she had actually tricked her to go to Jia Xin's side. But Mu Shi was ultimately still her biological younger brother. Seeing her younger brother die before her, Mu Huan was unable to look away. No! Mu Huan had only regained her senses when she heard a loud cry. She turned her head to look over and saw Chen Qingyan rushing over to kneel by the pit with tears of despair flowing down her face. Suddenly, Chen Qingyan raised her head and glared at Mu Ling with hatred, her eyes full of resentment. Me for extra chapters. Mu Shi was your son, your biological son. How could you see him die right before you without doing anything? How could you? Chen Qingyan was not even so angry when Mu Huan was being tortured by the huge pot earlier on. Now that her beloved son had died, her greatest hope in life was also lost. Mu Ling remained stunned as he stared at Mu Shi, who was lying at the bottom of the pit, and sorrow flashed in his eyes. This life, regardless of how many bad things he had done, he had still given the best to his children. Mu Shi had been with him for so many years. To have so suddenly lost him and to say that he was not sad, was absolutely impossible. A human was not a plant. How could he not have feelings? It was just that Mu Ling did not say a word this time around, keeping his silence. Chen Qingyan laughed out loud. Her laughter was maniacal. Mu Ling, I can tell you something. The poison your mother suffered from back then, was actually a poison I administered. Mu Ling shuddered. He looked at Chen Qingyan in shock and anger. What did you say? I heard my mother talking to your mother back then. My mother wanted us to be engaged at a young age, allowing me to marry you when I grew up. However, your mother rejected it. In the Mu family, I have always been living under charity. Those servants looked down on me as they felt that we were eating and drinking without contributing back to the Mu family, relying on your mother. So, since then, I swore I would not always have such days. I would turn things around. I wanted to make those who looked down on me to have to rely on my whims and fancies for survival in the future. Chapter 1265, The Truth 7. However, your mother, she rejected the idea. Rejected me growing up and marrying you. Back then, I was thinking, if she died. If she died, then there would be no one obstructing me from becoming the young lady of the Mu family. Too bad I was too young. I did not know how to tie up the loose ends well. I did not know how to get rid of the evidence, and your father finally managed to find some flaws. My mother knew that it was I who had poisoned your mother. She also knew that old Master Mu loved your mother a lot. My mother could not bear to let me die, so she accepted the punishment on my behalf. Ha ha ha, Mu Ling, you never would have known that the person who had given birth to your children and educated them was the enemy who had killed your mother. You took in your enemy who killed your mother as your concubine. You have greatly wronged the Mu family, ha ha ha. She had originally planned to keep this matter a secret for life. However, Xia was now dead. She had lost all hope in life. Now, she needed to make sure Mu Ling suffer and spend the rest of his life in guilt and regret. Mu Huan was dumbfounded as she looked at Qin Qingyan in a daze. She thought that she herself was already ruthless enough, but compared to Qin Qingyan, she finally understood how kind she actually was. It turned out that her mother was a person who would do anything in order to achieve her goals. Even to kill the people who stood in her way. However, did her mother ever think that if she confessed everything today, where would that leave her as her daughter at? Originally, perhaps her father would have let her off, seeing that she was related to him by blood. However, her mother had confessed to everything after she saw her brother die. And she became the daughter of the enemy who killed his mother. How would her father help her based on their blood relations? Her mother was pushing her onto the road of death. Mu Huan crumbled in utter despair. Her head was already knocked by the huge pot until she almost had a concussion, and now before she even got to recover, her thoughts also started to slowly become chaotic as she looked at Qin Qingyan in pure hatred. Even when she found out that Qin Qingyan had given her to Jia Axayan for Mu Zai's sake, she had not felt so much hatred toward her. Qin Qingyan. Mu Ling howled angrily before flashing before Qin Qingyan. He held onto her throat tightly, staring at her so angrily that his eyes looked like they were about to pop out and his eyes were bloodshot. You despicable person. Back then, how old was Qin Qingyan? At such a young age, how could she have used such ruthless methods? The funniest thing was that he had always thought that Qin Qingyan was innocent. Even when the old master had made things difficult for Qin Qingyan, he had protected her closely behind him. Back then, he had innocently thought that all the wrongdoings were committed by Qin Qingyan's mother and her mother had already died. Why was there a need to make things difficult for a young girl? Furthermore, how old was Qin Qingyan back then? She was still ignorant. Me for extra chapters. He had even believed that if Qin Qingyan knew that her mother was about to do something so ruthless, she would definitely have stopped her. But now, Qin Qingyan was telling him. All these were her doing when she was younger. And that her own mother was only a scapegoat. Ha ha ha. Mu Ling's laughter was heartbreaking. A bloody tear trickled out from the corner of his eye. Why did you tell me all these? Why? If he had not known these matters, perhaps he would feel sad, regretful and guilty. But he would never be this broken-hearted. He had loved for so many years the enemy who killed his mother. He allowed her to live in luxury, allowed her to bear his children and educate them, and even, repeatedly denied Sui's explanations for this woman. Until the point that he had even personally chased Sui away. Why? How good would it have been if Chen Qingyan had not said anything? She was already about to die. Why did she tell him all these just before her death? Feng Ruqing raised her hand and patted White Phoenix's head. Little Phoenix, all the best. I believe that you would be able to withstand the pain of being skinned alive and achieve your heart's desire. White Phoenix raised its head, startled by the sudden shower of affection. Did this mean Xiao Qingqing had agreed to let him become their father? With Xiao Qingqing's support, it felt that it would be able to marry Sui very soon and walk toward the pinnacle of life. Mu Ling was in a great rage and did not notice the interaction between Feng Ruqing and White Phoenix. He was solely focused on Chen Qingyan. Despicable person, I will allow your family of 3 to gather in hell shortly. Originally, he was still feeling sad over Mu Zai's death, but it was at this moment that he had found out such a cruel truth. The son and daughter of this enemy who had killed his mother, he did not want them in his life. Regardless of whether it was Mu Shi or Mu Huan. Mu Ling strangled Chen Qingyan. She was a little unable to breathe as blood flowed out from the corner of her lips. The cavity of her mouth was also filled with the copper taste of blood. However, a sneer still hung by her lips. Mu Ling, Nan Si would never accept you back in this lifetime. Nan Xian would also never acknowledge you as his father. Old Master also does not want you as his son. You have abandoned your wife and son, betrayed everyone and left behind all your relatives for me, the enemy who killed your mother. Ha ha ha. This is the price you have to pay, all because of your own stupidity. Chapter 1267, The regretful Mu Ling. Apart from his wife and son, he was disowned by everyone and abandoned by his relatives. This was the price he had to pay for his own stupidity. Chen Qingyan's words were like thunder ringing, blasting into Mu Ling's ears. His whole body trembled badly as his eyes were full of fury. Chen Qingyan's neck was trapped in Mu Ling's hand. Blood was flowing from the corner of her lips, but her gaze was unyielding and without fear. Such a gaze was one that she had never had before. It also made Mu Ling even more furious. You want to fuel my anger so as to accompany your useless son sooner. Ridiculous. To let you die so easily, would that not be to your advantage? I, Mu Ling, will not make such a silly error. I will definitely let you pay 100 times of the price for your wrongdoings, and even 1,000 times. Mu Ling's eyes were bloodshot as they held resentment. Even if he bled dry Chen Qingyan and skinned her, it would be difficult to rid the anger burning in his heart. Chen Qingyan's body went stiff. Now, all she wanted was to die. Could it be that even this was noticed by Mu Ling? When had he become so smart? Seeing Mu Ling's bloodshot eyes, Chen Qingyan shut her mouth, not saying a word more. Her eyes were filled with sarcasm, like a thorn ruthless piercing into Mu Ling's heart. It was as if she was reminding him how he had stupidly treated the enemy who murdered his mother as his lover, loving her and pampering her for so many years. Despicable person. You despicable person who deserves death, I will cut you to death and flog your corpse. Mu Ling violently threw Chen Qingyan on the ground as he said angrily, I will also cut up Mu Zai's body, allowing all of you to meet again in the most mutilated forms. Chen Qingyan had indeed done countless evil misdeeds in her life. However, to her, Mu Shi was her inverse scale one. Therefore, after she had heard Mu Ling's words, a hint of panic flashed in her eyes as she went pale. Mu Shi is your son. No matter what you do to me, I will not mind it. However, you cannot let him die without peace. At this moment, even her body was trembling hard, as her eyes were full of trepidation. Perhaps Chen Qingyan would never understand how Mu Ling could be so cruel to such an extent that he would not even let off his own son's corpse. Mu Ling had also finally found Chen Qingyan's point of pain. The corner of his lips curled up into a cruel arc as he immediately pushed Chen Qingyan away, walking directly to the deep pit. Me for extra chapters. No. Chen Qingyan hurriedly pounced over and hugged Mu Ling's thigh. He is your son. The son whom you have loved for so many years. Your biological son. The person who did wrong was me. Mu Shi is innocent. From far away, Mu Huan saw how Chen Qingyan was protecting Mu Shi. She only felt chills throughout her body. She could not help but squat down and use her hands to hug her knees, burying her head between her knees. No matter what, her mother had always only thought of Mu Shi alone. And she, her daughter, was left forgotten. Thinking back about all the things that had happened over the years, the corner of Mu Huan's lips curled up into a sarcastic arc. She raised her pale, small face and looked at Chen Qingyan with cold eyes. Perhaps, since Chen Qingyan had confessed that her grandmother died due to her plots, their mother-daughter relationship had also ended. Since mother had never even cared about her and only cared about Mu Shi alone, then why did she have to bother being so stubborn? Compared to the desolation in Mu Huan's heart, the others only looked at Mu Ling coldly. 1. Inverse scale of a dragon is its sorest spot. If one were to touch it, the dragon would get angry and upset. Basically, it just means a point that should not be touched, and it also similar to an Achilles heel. Chapter 1268. The regretful Mu Ling too. If he had known that this day would come, then why did he do what he did? Even old Master Mu did not empathize with Mu Ling, not to mention the other people. Qinger. Si suddenly seemed to have thought of something as she turned to look at Feng Ruqing. As for Mu Ling and the rest, they were entirely forgotten. Why didn't Nan Xian return with you? Feng Ruqing's fingers stiffened a little. She only managed to slowly answer after a while. He is still waiting for me to meet him. I was just a little worried and thus, have returned to take a look. Since everything is fine here, I will return shortly to seek him. When she had left Fengshui mainland, Feng Ruqing promised Qiuqiu that she would return to pick her up. But when she did return to Fengshui mainland, there would no longer be someone jumping out in front of her, no one calling her master. Oh. Si really could not understand why Feng Ruqing had returned but Nan Xian had not. It was good that she did not bother thinking too much and simply nodded. All right. Then when you bring him back, then your wedding matters should be settled since my in-laws are here. She had been waiting to drink this daughter-in-law's cup of tea for too long. The day was finally here. Si turned to look at Mu Ling coldly. She kept calm as her expression remained unchanged. Mu Ling, just now Chen Qingyan has spoken a truthful sentence. Everything that you have reaped today is due to your own foolishness. It was you who has harmed yourself for a lifetime. You don't need to come to my son's engagement. Since you chose to believe her instead of me back then, you are no longer his father. Mu Ling froze as he stopped in his tracks to the pit. Chen Qingyan took this opportunity to jump on his back, taking out a sword from who knows where and violently stabbed at Mu Ling. At this moment, Mu Ling had yet to regain his senses due to Si's words and had completely not noticed Chen Qingyan who had attacked him. Behind him, everyone saw it, but yet no one warned him. With Chen Qingyan's abilities, she could not kill Mu Ling, but this attack was also something he deserved too. Splat! The sword stabbed into Mu Ling's body. Blood flowed from his back and slowly spread out. The intense pain also made him slowly regain his senses. He turned his head and stared at Chen Qingyan with his cold, unfeeling eyes. Chen Qingyan released her hand and took a few steps backward. Her face seemed to have been drained of blood as she bit on her lower lip tightly. It was you who has forced me to do this. You wanted to maim Sierra's corpse. I will not allow you to do that. Mu Ling raised his hand to hold the handle of the sword. With a strong pull, he pulled out the sword from his body. Blood spurted out like a fountain, unable to stop. With the sword in his hand, he narrowed in on Chen Qingyan. Me for extra chapters. Would you rather give up on your own and Mu Huan's life, or rather I grind the bones in Mu Zai's body into ashes? Chen Qingyan shivered. Her son was already dead. To her, it was also meaningless to continue living. However, she turned around to look at Mu Huan, who was sitting on the ground, and clenched her fists. Then, just kill me. You are not allowed to insult Sierra. Sierra was her most beloved child. He was already dead. She just wished for him to rest in peace, not needing to undergo any suffering. As for herself and Mu Huan, even if Mu Ling let them off, Feng Ruqing and Sui would definitely not. Therefore, why should she not keep Sierra's body an intact corpse? Mu Huan had already known Chen Qingyan's choice, but when she personally heard these words, her heart still filled up with desolation. Both of them were Chen Qingyan's children, but her choice seemed to always be Mu Shi. Hee. Mu Huan stood up as she laughed softly. The more she laughed, the louder she became until her laughter became maniacal. To drink one's daughter-in-law's cup of tea is one of the procedures in the Chinese wedding ceremony. Chapter 1269, The Regretful Mu Ling 3, Chen Qingyan, I hate you. Her eyes were bloodshot and her hatred was intense. However, I will not continue to be humiliated here with you. I cannot accept not being able to just die in peace. I just hope that I will no longer be your daughter in the next life. Before Chen Qingyan and the rest were able to react in time, Mu Huan had already quickly snatched a sword from the hand of a guard who was standing nearby. With a ripping sound, she had ruthlessly stabbed the sword through her own body. Blood bloomed from her chest like a flower as the corner of her lips lifted into a smile that contained relief. Back then, when she had first acknowledged Master Hai Rong as her master, Mother had instructed her more than once that she definitely needed to stay by Master Hai Rong's side forever. Only then would Mu Shi have a chance to fight in the Mu family, only then would there be a possibility of the old master acknowledging them in the future. It was as if her birth had been a mistake right from the start. However, she had always thought that her mother was just a little biased as Mu Shi was younger than her. She had never thought that her mother would actually trick her into selling her body for Mu Shi. Furthermore, she would never have guessed that Chen Qingyan would rather choose to leave Mu Zai's corpse intact than to actually care about her life. She was a living person, yet she could not even compete against one who had left this world. Not knowing how. Just moments before she died, Mu Huan suddenly felt a little sense of admiration toward Feng Ruqing. At least, Feng Ruqing had the love of her biological parents, and a mother-in-law like Sui who loved her. Huaner. Seeing Mu Huan's eyes draining of life before her final breath, it was as if Chen Qingyan's heart was ruthlessly attacked. The blood on her face drained as she quickly ran over to Mu Huan. Huaner. She tightly hugged Mu Huan, whose body was covered in blood. Pain could be seen in her eyes. The corner of Mu Huan's lips tugged. If I were a boy and Mu Shi was a girl, would you have chosen to protect me instead? Chen Qingyan's heart shuddered. Mu Huan was her biological daughter. Even a ruthless tiger would not eat its own children, but she really had no choice. Mu Shi was her only son, she could not let him really die without peace. Me for extra chapters. Huaner, forgive me. I was forced into the corner. 2 trails of tears were streaming down Chen Qingyan's face. If you want someone to hate, then hate your father and Nan Sui. It is he who had pushed us to the brink of death. It is not I, your mother, who wishes to give up on you. Until the end, Chen Qingyan was still trying to push all the blame to someone else. She did not wish for her own daughter to carry her lifelong hatred toward her to hell. Mu Huan laughed sardonically. I only hate the fact that I am not a boy. Therefore, it was my fault to have allowed myself to be used by you, to have been abandoned by you. Seeing Mu Huan's eyes filled with hatred, Chen Qingyan's body trembled as she sadly lowered her gaze a little. Xie was a male. Regardless of how useless he was still her foundation. Mu Huan as the elder sister, sacrificing for him was something she should do. Therefore, she could not understand what exactly she did wrong, up to the point where Huaner hated her in the end. Under the morning light, Mu Huan bled more and more until the ground beneath her was dyed red. Her eyes slowly shut as she gradually lost her breath. This time, Mu Huan had made a wise choice. She understood that if she survived, what awaited her was definitely hell. Therefore, she might as well just die right away, lest she received punishment. Chen Qingyan obviously had also thought of this and took the advantage when Mu Ling was not paying attention. She drew out the sword from Mu Huan's chest and aimed it at her own heart, violently stabbing herself with it. Chapter 1270, The Regretful Mu Ling 4. However, just as the sword was about to pierce into her body, a light flashed past, cutting off her entire arm. It was so painful that she shrieked until her voice went hoarse, almost losing consciousness. You have hurt Sui for so many years and have almost caused old Master Mu to die. If you wish to die, I'm afraid that it will not be this easy. The corner of Feng Ruking's lips curled up into a faint curve. However, you do not have to worry. I will not hand you over to Mu Ling because, she paused. He does not have the right to punish you. Indeed, Mu Ling wished to vent all his hatred and anger on Chen Qingyan, but she would not give him such a chance. He needed to carry all these grudges and live out this life. At this moment, Mu Ling's anger had yet to subside. However, Mu Huan's death did allow him to somewhat recover his rationale. However, listening to Feng Ruking's words, a hint of conflicted emotions flashed in his eyes. In the end, he still did not make any move at all. Mother, get Elder Lei Yun to come over and bring Chen Qingyan to Feng Yun Manor. A hint of a smile appeared in Feng Ruking's eyes. I think this time, the Divine Herbs sect would not be such a busybody and snatch away someone from my hands. Also, get Elder Lei Yun to send the Divine Herbs sect a letter as well. Soon, I will pay them a visit. She explicitly said paying a visit, but no matter how Nailan Yen interpreted it, she felt that Feng Ruqing was going to go there to cause trouble. Oh, also, Feng Ruqing stroked her chin with a half-hearted smile as she looked at Chen Qingyan who had crumbled to the ground. You don't have to be too worried. I am very respectful of the dead. I will not be like Mu Ling to want to cut up your son into 1,000 pieces. Chen Qingyan raised her eyelids slightly, as she looked at Feng Ruqing weakly. Why was it that she did not believe Feng Ruqing would be so kind to actually let off her pitiful son? Old Master Mu, if I brought Mu Zai's corpse to feed the wolves, I don't think you would feel heartbroken, right? Feng Ruqing raised her head and looked at Old Master Mu with a smile. When Mu Shi was born, Old Master Mu had already become muddle-headed and so, he never really had much interaction with Mu Shi. However, Mu Shi was still his grandson. However, he also knew that Mu Shi was as selfish and as ruthless as Chen Qingyan. He had caused quite a bit of harm to many women from good families in his life. His end today was also befitting of his sins. Therefore, Old Master Mu sighed lightly in the end. I do not have much of an opinion of you feeding him to the wolves. I just hope that he will be born in a good family in his next life and not to such a mother who would teach a good child to be wrong. Me for extra chapters. As a child, Mu Ling and Qin Qingjian's blood was flowing in his body. Naturally, he also had some of the character flaws his parents possessed. However, all children are born blank slates. Even if he had the blood of these two people, things would not have necessarily ended this way if he was brought up properly. Take Nan Xian for example. He was also Mu Ling's seed, but he did not have the least bit of Mu Ling's selfishness and foolishness. This was all due to Suyi's good teachings. Don't. Qin Qingjian's body trembled badly. She used all her strength to climb back up and leaped before Feng Ruqing. You said that you were very respectful to the dead. How could you treat my son like this? I beg you to let him off. Feng Ruqing lowered her gaze with a smile on her face. Indeed, I respect the corpse because I rear quite a number of spirit beasts and these spirit beasts' feces could be used as fertilizer in the future and make the spirit herbs grow faster. See. I am even allowing him to contribute to this world even after his death. Shouldn't you be thanking me? Chapter 1271, The Regretful Mu Ling v. Qing'er. Feng Tianyu looked at Qin Qingyan who was kneeling before Feng Ruqing in indifference before looking at Feng Ruqing with a warm gaze. Just leave this matter to me. At this moment, Qin Qingyan felt her body going soft as she almost passed out. She bit her lower lip hard in order to keep herself awake. She did not understand. How could the human heart be so ruthless? Qin Qingyan did not have the chance to beg as she was dragged away by old Master Mu's people. They also dragged away Mu Shi and Mu Huan's corpses. Their departure finally brought back peace and silence to the street. Father, Mother, I still need to make a trip to the chief manor. It was so difficult for Qing'er to return, both of you need to take care of him well. All these years, Qing'er had suffered too much in the Qin family. The moment she thought about those scenes, her heart felt pain. However, she had something more important to do at the moment. Qing'er, we had just gathered together not long ago and previously, there were still other people causing a racket. Why are you leaving so soon? Feng Tianyu's handsome face looked a little ugly. Are you going to see that stupid boy, Nan Xian? Feng Ruqing's face darkened. Imperial father, you called other people a stupid boy in front of his mother and grandfather. Is that really a good idea? Nailin Yan nudged Feng Tianyu. Even if you are dissatisfied that your daughter is being taken away, you can't scold Nan Xian in front of other people. We are here to discuss their engagement. If you are angry, you could express your dissatisfaction behind their backs. After all, nobody would know. Feng Ruqing, Suyi, and old Master Mu were rendered speechless. Even Mu Ling who had long been forgotten on the sideline was also speechless. Cough, cough. In the end, old Master Mu lightly coughed twice and broke the awkward silence. In the future, we are all a family. If there is anything Nan Xian does not do well, as his parents-in-law, whenever there is a need to scold him, just scold him. If there is a need to beat him, just beat him. There is no need to be courteous. As a man, his skin is very tough. There are some things that he needs to bear on his own. As a man, he had to endure beatings and withstand scolding. He had to carry this family's burdens on his shoulders. The bloody light in Mu Ling's eyes had dispersed and he raised his head to look at old Master Mu. So, this was the reason the old master had beaten him up since young. At least when the old master's head was still clear, he would also beat up Mu Qingyin, not caring the least bit about Mu Qingjian's body. Could it be that he had always felt that men could endure beatings? Even the corner of Suyi's lips could not help but turn down. Me for extra chapters. Yes, this was indeed Nan Xian's grandfather. Biological grandfather. She sighed as she lit a candle for Nan Xian in her heart. Then, she gently held Feng Rooking's hand. Qing'er, don't worry. Your wedding matters can be decided when he returns. In the future, if he bullies you, I will bring you far away. There is no need to be bothered about him. White Phoenix flapped its wings as it looked at her in anticipation. Sui, what about me? Oh, Sui's expression remained indifferent. You can follow Nan Xian and live together and soar together. White Phoenix was left speechless. It just wanted to be Nan Xian's father. It did not wish to live and soar with him. Sui, a voice full of grief called out to Sui. The last bit of smile on Sui's face disappeared. Her back faced Mu Ling, not saying a single word. I know you hate Chen Qingyan. I hate her too. However, I can give her to you and you can deal with her however you like. He wished he could personally end Chen Qingyan. However, this time, he was willing to let Sui deal with Chen Qingyan. All right. Sui remained indifferent. She sounded weary, obviously not wanting to say anything more to him. Chapter 1272, The Regretful Mu Ling 6th Sui, Mu Ling's voice contained suppressed pain. I did not know these matters. I really did not know that you were the one who had saved me back then. I also did not know that Chen Qingyan had done so many wrong things. Could you forgive me? Taking into consideration Old Master and Nan Xian. It was not hard to hear his nervousness through his voice, fearful that Sui would reject him. Even White Phoenix's heart was violently guarded as he glared at Mu Ling. This scum actually dares to ask Sui to forgive him. It is impossible that Sui would forgive him. Absolutely impossible. Although it thought so in its heart, White Phoenix still looked at Sui somewhat nervously, awaiting her reply. I got it. Sui remained calm and elegant. For Old Master Mu's sake, I will not be calculative with you. Then. Sui, however, even though I can forgive you for abandoning me and forgive your betrayal, I cannot forgive you for trying to harm my grandchildren. Mu Ling was a little stunned. I did not. Furthermore, I do not think we have any grandchildren. Sui calmly turned around and looked at Mu Ling coldly. Do you want me to remind you? She approached Mu Ling. You sent people to Lu Yun Kingdom and wanted to poison Qing'er, intending to render her infertile. If it were not because Qing'er is so strong, and the people you had hired had their own agenda and had used the poison on someone else, I would never ever hear anyone calling me grandmother with Nan Xian's attitude of only wanting Qing'er in this life. Suddenly, everyone glared at Mu Ling fiercely. Old Master Mu was so angry that he pointed at Mu Ling. Mu Ling, you are an animal reared by a bitch. Get lost, get out of the Mu family. The old housekeeper nearby was trying to calm the old master down. Old Master, you can scold if you want to, but do not scold Our Lady. Are you not afraid that Our Lady would crawl out from hell and fight with you? Old Master was so angry that he had gotten muddled. He had actually scolded Mu Ling, saying that he was brought up by a bitch. Was that not scolding his own wife who had passed away? Hee hee. Feng Tianyu sneered. It seems like the state preceptor's father is not only stupid, but even his heart is black. Nobody can simply destroy my, Feng Tianyu's, daughter to such an extent. Today, I want the Mu family to give me an explanation. Otherwise, my daughter will not get married. Coincidentally, there was an excuse. He could keep his daughter for a few more years. At least, he could prevent the state preceptor from taking his daughter away so easily. The moment Feng Tianyu thought about how the state preceptor was staying in Lu Yun Kingdom for so many years with impure intentions, his heart felt uncomfortable. Me for extra chapters. He even thought that the state preceptor was a good person and had been so respectful toward him. He had never expected that he would take his baby daughter away. Nalan Yen did not say a word as she pursed her lips lightly, obviously agreeing with Feng Tianyu's words. Qin Chen subconsciously took 2 steps forward as his cold eyes locked onto Mu Ling. What do you mean not marry? Qing'er definitely needs to marry Nan Xian, Sui said calmly. I am not someone from the Mu family. Nan Xian and I are not related to Mu Ling in any way. Besides, Nan Xian and I have nowhere to go. So, why don't I stay at Luyun Kingdom's imperial palace? At least I'll have my in-law, Nalan Yen, as a companion. Originally, old Master Mu was a little anxious when he heard Feng Tianyu's words. As to why it was just a little. It was because he had thought that Sui would be in the same boat. However, now that he had heard that Sui was not willing to stay at the Mu family, the old master panicked completely. No, all of you are not allowed to leave. Who allowed all of you to leave? Nan Xian and Xiao Qing are the Mu family's people. I have just kicked Mu Ling out of the family clan. Old Master Mu glared angrily at Mu Ling. Why are you still not leaving? You just have to affect your so. Tui, could it be that you want to affect Nan Xian's happiness? Get lost. Get lost. Get lost. Chapter 1273, A Lifetime of Pain. Mu Ling was left speechless. At this moment, he really had the feeling of being betrayed by everyone and abandoned by all his relatives. However, all these were the consequences of his own choices and he could not blame it on anyone else. Father, who is your father? Get lost. I don't have such a son like you. Go as far as you can, do not obstruct our family from a happy gathering. He said it as if Mu Ling was not part of his family. Mu Ling's facial expression turned very ugly. He felt as if there were needles on his back. His whole body felt uncomfortable. However, he understood that once he left, he would not have a chance to return again. Therefore, under the watchful gaze of the crowd, Mu Ling's knees slowly bent and finally landed on the ground. With a thud, his knees seemed to also knock into everyone's heart. Father, I was wrong. I beg you, considering the fact that I was being kept in the dark by Qin Qingyan, forgive me this once. Mu Ling's tears were streaming down his face as he looked like he was in great pain. Even his voice had an uncontrollable trembling. It was the first time old Master Mu had witnessed Mu Ling in such a state. He looked at him as he sighed gently. You do not need to say sorry to me. The ones you should be sorry to are Sui and Nan Xian, the mother and son pair, as well as the little girl, Xiao Qing. You have never done anything wrong to me. To forgive you or not is not in my hands. You yourself had made such a mistake. Then, you need to have the courage to face it and not just blindly admit your mistakes to me. Which part exactly is it of Xiao Qing that is not good? Why do you keep insisting on finding other women for Nan Xian? And you even use dirty tricks to render her infertile. Old Master Mu became more and more upset as he spoke. The longer Mu Ling lived, the more foolish he was becoming. He was actually being kept in the dark by Qin Qingyan to such an extent. Mu Ling slowly closed his eyes as his handsome face went pale. It was as if he had lost all his strength in that instant. After quite some time, he finally opened his eyes and looked at Sui. So many times, he could not help but wish that things could be the same as they were in the past, holding her hands and telling her about his revenge. Each time, Sui would comfort him seriously. Even though his father had always said that he was incapable, Sui believed that he could take care of the Mu family well. Me for extra chapters. In order to make his father more assured of leaving the Mu family to him, Sui had helped him to manage the Mu family. During the years when she was around, the Mu family were always expanding and was doing well. The spirit herb storage had also never suffered losses. Now, when he retrospect on everything, Sui had really helped him too much. However, what did he do? He had actually personally chased away the woman who loved him the most. I'm sorry, the corner of Mu Ling's lips trembled as he clenched his fists tightly. Only by doing so could he muster the courage to face Sui. I will spend the rest of my life to make it up to you. Sui smiled indifferently. There is no need. I have already let go of all the things of the past. Now, you only own Nan Xian and Qing'er. However, Qing'er does not have the time to be too calculative with you now. She has other more important things to do. When Mu Ling knelt in front of old Master Mu, Feng Ruqing had already quietly left. To her, it was more important to look for Nan Xian now. Naturally, she was not bothered by Mu Ling, who was unimportant to her. Mu Ling's eyelids dropped to hide the sadness in his eyes. Perhaps from the moment he had decided to tear apart Nan Xian and Feng Ruqing, Sui had decided to never forgive him. Feng Ruqing had long left quietly. The other people naturally did not pay any attention to Mu Ling. Feng Tianyu and Nailan Yan took the lead to walk into Mu residence. Taking into consideration old Master Mu, they did not deal with Mu Ling otherwise. With Feng Tianyu's temper, Mu Ling would have long been cut into 1,000 pieces. Of course, to Mu Ling, staying alive was definitely more painful to him than being dead. However, he did not have the courage to kill himself. Chapter 1274. A lifetime of pain too. As such, they just let him live to carry the guilt for the rest of his life. Let him carry the pain of being abandoned by his wife and child, as well as being betrayed by everyone and all his relatives leaving him. In Tianshan Manor, everything was silent and peaceful. Especially in the Luo family, it was quiet and felt different from the usual. The current master of the Luo family had his arms circled around a beautiful concubine as he drank and talked happily with other people. He did not know of the Qin family's destruction and was only feeling happy being promoted to the Luo family's master. Just at this moment, thud! The door of the Luo family was kicked open. The sound was very loud, scaring Luo Xiang so much that the wine cup in his hand had almost dropped to the ground. He was a little annoyed when he looked up. Who is it that coming to seek death again? In the next moment, all the noise around quietened. The wine cup in his hand instantly slipped to the floor and shattered into pieces. Cold sweat was dripping from his forehead. Even his back was drenched. The beads of sweat stuck to his skin. At the moment, he could not be bothered about anything else. He quickly pushed the beautiful concubine in his hand away and immediately stood up. He was clearly frightened. Moss. Master. How come you have returned? Standing at the door was, surprisingly, Luo Fei, who had been rescued by Gu Shi. It was also because Luo Fei had been rescued that Feng Ruqing did not protect Luo Li and had brought her back. The Luo family's matters should naturally be solved by Luo Fei himself. As such, when Luo Fei's injuries had more or less recovered, he brought Luo Li and the old lady back to the Luo family. Luo Li pursed her lips from the beginning to the end as the little fox cuddled in her arms. However, the gaze she used to look at Luo Xiang was full of anger. Why? Luo Fei sneered. Are you very disappointed that I did not die in the Qin family? More sweat started to pour down Luo Xiang's forehead. He raised his hand to wipe off the sweat, but no matter how he wiped, he was unable to wipe his sweat away. And the rest of you? Luo Fei glanced coldly at the group of Luo family's people who were drinking and enjoying themselves in the hall. Back then, I had treated all of you genuinely, but the moment something happened to me, all of you bullied my mother and my daughter, and have even beat up my daughter to such an extent. Whenever he saw the frightening scars on Luo Li's arms, the anger in Luo Fei's heart was sufficient to swallow these people whole. All these were his Luo family's people. They were people he had nurtured single-handedly, people who existed to protect the Luo family. Me for extra chapters. Now, he was only just taken away by Qinli, but they already felt that he had already met his end and had actually treated his lyre like that. He could not imagine if Maiden Feng had not returned. What would have awaited lyre? Moss, master. You have misunderstood. I was only, Luo Xiang's lips were trembling and his face was pale. However, he was still unable to say a single word in the end. Misunderstood. What did he misunderstand? He had indeed chased out Luo Li and old madam. Similarly, the wounds on Luo Li were his doing. Luo Fei was not a fool. He would not believe him without a doubt just because of a few words. Wait. Suddenly, Luo Xiang seemed to have thought of something as he suddenly raised his head and glared at Luo Fei. Was he not taken away by the Qin family? Then, how did he manage to return? All of you are keen to know how my son is able to return. The old lady saw through Luo Xiang's thinking at a glance and she said slowly, it is because Qinli is already taken away by the manor master. The Qin family is no more. Qin Feier is also missing. All of you have tried to climb up to power by relying on the Qin family and have chased us, grandparent and grandchild, out of the house by force. Now, it seems like karma is biting back, retribution is here. She would never forget how she, an old lady who was so close to stepping into her grave, was chased out of the Luo family humiliatingly. Chapter 1275, A Lifetime of Pain 3. Now, she had returned together with Luo Fei to personally witness these people, who had been personally groomed by her husband and son, pay the price of their selfishness. Luo Fei, I want this group of people to leave the Luo family. Luo Xiang's face changed as panic flashed in his eyes. Old lady, back then it was Qinli who had forced me to do so. I know my mistake, I really know my mistake. I beg you, don't kick me out. The reclusive world was different from the secular world. In the secular world, if one were to be kicked out of the family clan, there was always another path for them. However, in the reclusive world, it was not the same. The reclusive world was incredibly dangerous. Unless one had strong powers, otherwise, without a family clan protecting and supporting them, surviving would be incredibly difficult. Furthermore, Luo Fei was one of Gu Shi's men. However, he had stood on Qin Li's side in this battle. In the whole reclusive world, besides the Divine Herbs sect and Deity's Gate, these kinds of powers, there were no other people who would accept him. Furthermore, perhaps in order to obtain the favor of Tianshan Manor, this group of people would presumptuously humiliate and harm them. As for the Divine Herbs sect and Deity's Gate, to these powers, he had no innate talent and he was no longer young. How would they possibly accept him? Luo Fei, give them a good beating and kick them out. Old Lady Luo's face was solemn. I do not wish to see them leave in pristine condition. If they do not leave behind a little something, they cannot leave at all. Grandmother, Luo Li said while staring angrily at Luo Xiang, the others can be beaten and kicked out of the family clan, and we should also tell the whole world that if anyone dares to accept these traitors, they are making us, the Luo family, their enemies. As well as enemies of Shao Qing. When she had left the chief manor, she had met Feng Ruqing who was there to meet Gu Shi. Shao Qing had told her that she could do whatever she wanted without worry as she would back her up. Yes, this feeling of being protected by others was really good. Therefore, Luo Li had presumptuously used Feng Ruqing's name. Those people were not afraid of the Luo family, but they would be afraid of Shao Qing, right? They should blame her for being narrow-minded. Women have always been quite petty. She did not wish for these traitors to live well. Me for extra chapters. However, Luo Xiang had almost killed my little fox. He cannot leave just after a beating. He has to be beaten until he is half dead with only a breath away from death. Then, throw him out and let him live or die on his own. If he is lucky, perhaps he would survive. If he is unlucky, then he can't blame it on others. Her little fox was also lucky that Feng Ruqing had so coincidentally returned. If it were not so, she and little fox would most likely be separated by life and death by now. The moment she thought about it, Luoli felt her heart clenching in pain. She had really almost lost her little fox forever. Therefore, she needed to repay a tooth with a tooth. How Luo Xiang had treated her little fox, she would treat him in the same way. Hearing Luo Li's words, Luo Xiang's body went limp as he crumbled to the ground. He understood that he was really done for this time. In the chief manor. On top of the back mountain. Gu Shi sat in a daze on the fake rock mountain. His gaze was still on the barrier, unable to move his eyes away. He had only regained his sense a little when he heard footsteps from behind him. He turned around to look at the person approaching him. Seeing the young maiden who was approaching him, he forced the corner of his lips into a smile. Maiden Feng, I have waited for you for a long time, all right. Feng Ruqing slowly walked to Gu Shi. I know I exited with your assistance. However, Gu Yi and Nan Xian did not follow me out. Do you have any way to let me enter once again? I will find a way to bring them out. Chapter 1276, Destroying Fangzhou Mainland unless they exit on their own, otherwise, it would be a little difficult. If Maiden Feng wishes to re-enter, it would also not be so easy. Gu Shi laughed bitterly as he shook his head. He looked on straight ahead as his eyes contained worry. Originally he had thought that Yi would also be following her back. However, in the end, he was still unable to see her. Maiden Feng, the barrier on the outside has been destroyed, but the barrier on the inside has the ability to auto-regenerate. That was to say, Feng Ruqing had destroyed the barrier to leave, but once she left Fangzhou mainland, the barrier would naturally be regenerated. It might even be that Fangzhou mainland thought that its own barrier was not strong enough and had become even tougher so that it would be more difficult to break again. If Yi wished to return, it would be even more difficult than before. Feng Ruqing raised her brow as she asked calmly, then, what if we were to make Fangzhou mainland disappear? Gu Shi's heart trembled as he looked at her in astonishment. What did you just say? If Fangzhou mainland completely disappears, will they return? She would not forget that Nan Xian was still dealing with a strong savage beast at the moment. Only when she had thoroughly destroyed Fangzhou mainland could Nan Xian return. Otherwise, she was afraid that even Nan Xian would find it difficult to leave the barrier area. You want to destroy Fangzhou mainland? Gu Shi stared at Feng Ruqing. Do you know what you are saying? Feng Ruqing sneered. Why can't I destroy it? Fangzhou mainland is not even supposed to exist in this world. If I destroy it, not only is Nan Xian able to return, even those spirit beasts would be able to escape that world. Gu Shi's heart shook strongly. He was only able to slowly regain his senses after a while. Fangzhou mainland was created by a strong cultivator back then. She had put everyone who had offended her back then in Fangzhou mainland and ordered the spirit beasts to volunteer to go to Fangzhou mainland and suppress those criminals. Maiden Feng, it is not that I am looking down on you, but to destroy the place that that person has left behind is really too difficult. In this current world, I'm afraid that not many people would be able to do so. Feng Ruqing had managed to leave Fangzhou mainland because he was helping her from the outside. Not to mention destroying Fangzhou mainland. Gu Shi was not looking down on Feng Ruqing. It was merely a fact that this matter was a little too unbelievable. Regardless of how much he believed in Feng Ruqing's abilities and cultivation, he could not believe that she could do this. Feng Ruqing slowly walked in the direction of the back mountain. The things I could not do inside does not mean that I cannot do them when I am out here. Since one has to go through the chief manor to enter Fangzhou mainland, then it proves that the heart of the array is definitely hidden in the chief manor. Perhaps it is somehow related to the chief manor. Every space was created with an array. Of course, one also needed to have sufficient cultivation to open up space. Then, why was it that in order to reach Fangzhou mainland, one had to come to the chief manor? Me for extra chapters. She did not believe that these two matters were unrelated. Therefore, Feng Ruqing paused. I do not need to destroy Fangzhou mainland, I just need to destroy this back mountain. Astonishment could be seen in Gu Shi's eyes. Feng Ruqing's words were too logical. Why was it that throughout this whole year, he had never thought of this? Instead, he was standing guard, blindly waiting for them to exit on their own. Strong spiritual qi started to gather into a storm surrounding Feng Ruqing, like a hurricane. Her red clothes flapped in the wind, beautiful and magnificent. Chapter 1277, Destroying Fangzhou Mainland to Fangzhou Mainland. Forbidden Mountain. The gale was blowing like a storm. Nan Xian was fully dressed in white, handsome like an immortal. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his lips, but his gaze remained indifferent. Even when he was facing such a fierce and violent savage beast, his white shirt was still floating in the wind and not a speck of dust could be seen. The savage beast let out a fierce roar as it instantly rushed toward Nan Xian. Its teeth were incisive and its claws were also razor-sharp. Like a sharp sword flashing, it flashed toward Nan Xian. At the same time, compared to the dangerous Forbidden Mountain, Tianyue Kingdom was much quieter. Perhaps it was because the wolfhound had saved the human child back then. The people of Tianyue Kingdom did not fear the spirit beasts but rather became friendlier toward them. Indeed, their ancestors had done wrong, but it did not mean that the descendants of those ancestors would make the same mistakes. Back then, they had blindly believed the rumors of the imperial family left behind. That was why they had hated the spirit beasts. However, when they interacted with the spirit beasts, they realized that they were actually so cute. With Feng Ruqing's hand in this, the wolfhound had broken through to become a Tier 7 spirit beast. It had ultimate power in Tianyue Kingdom. However, although the word wolfhound still had the word wolf in it, it was still very different from an actual wolf. Wolves are proud and elegant. But dogs can never change their inherent slaving nature. It would never put itself first and look down on humans. It would never forget the person who had taken it in, even though it was still chased out in the end. In a small town outside the imperial city, a group of children was squatting by the ground, playing with mud. Their bodies were dirty and even their clothes were a little torn and worn. Little Doggy stood nearby, looking at these children. Finally, its gaze landed on a somewhat familiar little face. Compared to the children who had dirt on their faces, this little male doll was comparatively much cleaner. Actually, it also did not know why it had returned. Perhaps it was just not resigned. Not resigned that it had been abandoned, and even more so thought that they had abandoned him because they had no choice. However, me for extra chapters. Seeing the little male doll's tattered and dirty clothes playing with the mud on the ground, little Doggy was a little confused. Its eyes also looked lost. Even if it was dirty, it was still cleaner than the mud. Why did the master's wife complain that it was dirty and chased it out but let him play with the mud? Little Doggy did not say a word but quietly stood by the side. From the beginning to the end, its gaze never left the little male doll. The moment it returned to its hometown, it could recognize him at a glance. After all, he looked very much alike to his previous master when he was young, and it had followed its previous master since young. Naturally, his looks were carved in his mind. As for why he was considered a previous master, it was because he already had phone reaching now. It was just not resigned in its heart, so it had decided to return to its hometown. Let it take another look at the people who it had never forgotten. The little boy seemed to be in an argument with his fellow playmates. He stumbled and fell to the ground when he was pushed by his fellow playmates as tears started to flow down his cheeks. When the wolfhound saw this scene, a hint of anger flashed in its eyes. Its body became a flash of lightning as it instantly dashed over. Just as the fellow playmates were about to hit the little boy again, it let out a low warning growl. Those kids were suddenly scared. With the wolfhound's growl, they were so scared that they fell onto their butts and started crying before turning around and running away. Little dog. The little boy had already stopped crying. He raised his little head and looked at the wolfhound unblinkingly. Chapter 1278, Destroying Fangzhou Mainland 3. The wolfhound was larger than the little boy and it needed to lower its head to see him. Dogs are naturally gentle toward children. What more a wolfhound who was already a domesticated spirit beast? However, the wolfhound did not speak, fearful that it would scare him. It used its head to wipe the little boy's tears as if silently comforting him. Indeed, the little boy stopped crying and started to laugh, using his small hands to pat the wolfhound's head. However, just as the wolfhound was about to help the little boy up, a hateful voice spoke from behind. Where did this dog come from? Stay further away from my grandchild. This voice could not be more familiar to the wolfhound. Its big body also stiffened as it turned its head around to look, somewhat stunned. It saw an old woman running over with a broom in her hands as she angrily shouted, "Quickly get lost. Otherwise, I will beat you to death today." After the old woman had finished speaking, she lowered her head to look at the little boy and picked him up from the ground. You want to bring back a stray again? These dogs are too dirty. Keeping dogs will cause diseases. That year when I was pregnant with your father, I had forced your grandfather to kick his dog out. I will definitely not allow any dog into my house, in case we contract any diseases. But the big doggy protected me. The little boy was a little reluctant. These kind of things are too dirty. If you dare to bring it back, I will beat it to death. Back then, I had also said the same thing to your grandfather. That is why he had kicked that dog out back then. Could it be that you wish to follow your grandfather's path? The old woman scolded angrily. The wolfhound looked at the old woman, stunned. Then, it looked at the little boy who was in her arms. Oh, it turned out he was not his previous master's son, but rather, his grandson. That was possible too, it had already been so many years. His children would have already gotten married and had their own children. However, its previous master's wife still looked at it with hatred, just like in the past. Could it be that it was even dirtier than mud? The wolfhound was a little perplexed by human thinking. It also did not bother to think more as it shook its head and turned around to leave. This time it had come back just to take a look at these people and also wished to thoroughly bid farewell to its past. After it saw these, it suddenly understood. Now, it had friends, a master, and the many people who liked it in Tianhua Kingdom. It was no longer a lonely stray dog. Me for extra chapters. That's enough. Why are you being calculative with a child? An old man walked out from behind her, frowning. The moment he raised his head, he saw the wolfhound's back. His pupils suddenly contracted. Ah Huang. Alike. Too alike to his Ah Huang. Even that black patch of fur on its butt was exactly the same as Ah Huang's. What Ah Huang? It has already been more than 20 years. Ah Huang has long been in the ground. The old lady sneered. It is just a dog. Do you need to think of it for over 20 years? Even every dog that looks like it. You shut up, the old man shouted in rage. If it was not for you scaring my mother, saying Ah Huang was too dirty and would affect our child, would my mother have forced me to chase away Ah Huang? You have even threatened me that you would find a chance to beat Ah Huang to death when I am not around. If it were not for you too, I would not have chased it away back then. Everything I said is the truth. You do not even bother to take a look at how dirty dogs are. If my grandchild got sick because of it, what will we do? It is just a dog. Could it be that it is not even as important as a person in your heart? The old man was so angry that he could not even speak. The wolfhound did not turn back. Even though the person behind it was someone it had missed for a long time. Chapter 1279, Sky falling, earth cracking. The ground suddenly started to tremble. It was as if the surface of the ground was moving and the mountains were shaking. The sky was falling and the earth was cracking. Together with the shrill sharp screaming, it was so ear-piercing. The old woman stumbled and the little boy in her hands rolled out of her arms. She had just climbed back up when she saw that an old tree by the roadside was falling, inclining toward the little boy. At that moment, the old woman's eye rims were red as she shouted loudly, "My grandson." The little boy's eyes were a little blurred. He did not know how to escape as he looked at the tree that was falling toward him in a daze. The old woman almost lost her consciousness. Her whole body was trembling. However, the little boy had rolled quite a distance away, and with their strength as two old people, it was entirely impossible for them to be able to rush over in time. She could only watch the old tree falling toward the little boy. Just at this moment, a gale swept past them from the side. When the old woman and old man raised their heads to see, they saw a yellow light like a flash of lightning, rushing toward the little boy at high speed. It used its warm embrace to protect the little boy. Thud! The old tree was falling toward the wolfhound, but before it had managed to smash down, it was split into two by the wolfhound's spiritual power. The tree fell to the ground in two halves. The old woman was stunned. She stared at the wolfhound who had rushed to protect the little boy in its embrace in a daze. A surge of shame rose from her heart, rendering her speechless for a long time. The old man looked at the wolfhound at a loss. After a while, he finally opened his mouth to ask, "Are you Ah Huang?" The wolfhound did not speak. It put down the little boy from its embrace. From the beginning to the end, it did not once turn to look at the old man. It turned around and planned to return to the imperial city. Big doggy. The little boy held onto the wolfhound's paw with tears gathering in his eyes. "Don't leave me for extra chapters." The wolfhound looked at the little boy. Perhaps it was because the boy looked innocent and somewhat ignorant, it recalled the happy days during its childhood, so its gaze had also softened quite a bit. It used its paw to pat the little boy's head but still left determinedly. After all, the moment it had left this family back then, it no longer belonged to this place. Not to mention, now, it already had a new master. Ah Huang, the old man looked at the leaving wolfhound whilst shaking. He stumbled as his eyes were glistening with tears. "Where are you going, Ah Huang?" "Back then, when you left the house, where did you go? I could not find you all this while." Back then, after he had kicked out Ah Huang, he regretted his decision and wanted to bring it back. However, he had searched in many places and asked many people, but he was still unable to find it. He had originally thought that their fate had thus ended. He never thought that he could see it again in this lifetime. The wolfhound stopped in its tracks for a moment before continuing to walk toward the exit of the small town. At this moment, the ground was still shaking. Even the sky had traces of crumbling and cracking. A troop of Tianhua Kingdom soldiers walked over and stood before the wolfhound, respectfully saying, "Lord Hound, we have finally found you. Now that Fangzhou mainland is undergoing changes, we would like to invite Lord Hound to go to the manor of the town head to take shelter." There was hearsay, a weird monster that swallowed the heavens and destroyed the earths had come to the Fangzhou mainland. Just now, the ground beneath the people's feet had disappeared. Even the people had disappeared along with it. The town head's manor should be considered a safer place. Lord Hound was the only Tier 7 spirit beast now. They had to ensure its safety. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.